talking about positive reinforcement. Okay, that's kind of a term that gets used all over the place. It has a lot of misinformation with it. There's just a lot to it. But I want to talk a little bit about it. First, I want to say it is all based in science. Nobody made this up. So if somebody doesn't like or doesn't accept or puts their hand up, says, oh no, I won't do that, then as far as positive reinforcement or utilizing food and training, it tells us one of a few things. Either they don't really know what it is, they don't know the science behind it, they've seen it done poorly, or even maybe they've done it themselves poorly. So positive reinforcement, utilizing food, is not the problem. It is using it or doing it incorrectly without the knowledge to support it. So it's a very powerful tool, food is. It's one of the most powerful reinforcers we have. So the trick is, how do we use food and make it in a constructive way? How do we be able to fade the food from a particular behavior? How do we not let it be all about the food? And so I want to just kind of dive into that just a little bit. Firstly, and we've all heard, you can't hand feed a horse, you'll get a spoiled, rude, dangerous horse. The food isn't the problem. What the struggle is not being aware of the timing and the other factors. It's the timing and the person that is creating this issue. Every single time you feed your horse, you're reinforcing something, whether it's dinner time, turning him out in a pasture, every single time something is being reinforced. So understanding behavior from that aspect, I think, is really, really helpful no matter which way you want to go. Whether you want to continue only using traditional training or the negative reinforcement, that's not a problem. The more you understand positive reinforcement, or the more you understand behavior, the more that you can make an educated choice of your protocol and moving forward with training. So, and let's kind of boil this down. There is always, every single behavior happens for a reason. All behavior serves a purpose. They're either trying to get something they want or to avoid something they don't want. So there's two reinforcers at play. One is positive reinforcement, means adding something to the equation, which is reinforcing. And one is negative reinforcement, means subtracting something from the equation, which increases the frequency of behavior. So for one thing, we have with that, so think of them like numbers, plus and minus. It doesn't mean good and bad. It simply means one is added and one is subtracted. They both increase the frequency of behavior. Traditional training is often known as pressure and release. That is classic negative reinforcement. We apply the pressure, and then they're good, we take the pressure away. They're working for that aversive, that pressure, to go away. So on the other hand, when we're utilizing food, we're activating the seeking system, something they want, something they like, something they desire. And when we get educated, understand how to do it, we can teach them how to perform a behavior in order to get the food. And then we fade the food from the particular behavior. And I think that's a misunderstanding. A lot of people think they're only doing it for the food. I'm going to tell you, positive reinforcement is deep. It goes very, very deep, deeper than you can even imagine. It's not just about training the thing, because that's important too, is training the thing. But it also, what it does is it really changes the neural pathways. It changes their emotional state. It changes our relationship. It does so much more than you can possibly imagine. And so I think that it's important to keep that in mind, that we can change our relationship. We can change their performance. We can change their perspective of the world. We can change their neural pathways. We can take trauma and turn it into something, turn that around. So I think those things, but it all takes some understanding about the behavior and then some tools from people that have done it enough to be able to put it into the practical, real horse world. So it's not a foo-foo woo-woo thing. It is hardcore science. And neurobiology is coming along. Neuroscience is really teaching us so much more about the brain and how it works and how it's related to the body, that things are really kind of exploding as far as our understanding goes. I think a really good example of the positive reinforcement making a change is, there's a horse named Addie that Jesse that we is part of us, and Addie had gone off to training, and she was young, and she left here a really secure horse who was born here, grew up in a herd, was very settled, very bright, thoughtful, and she went off to a barn who, didn't quite understand her, who knows exactly what went on. But in a couple years, she turned into an aggressive horse. And so the owner called Jesse who bred her, but had sold her to this person. The owner called Jesse and said, Addie is not the same. You better come see her. She's biting, she's kicking, she's aggressive, she's unhappy. And so Jesse goes and sees her, and sure enough, Jesse with Jesse, the person who pulled her out of her mother's womb, basically, and she was aggressive. She was trying to bite and kick her. So they get Addie back home. Well, Jesse started hundreds of horses, hunter jumpers in the professional world, hundreds of young horses. So she's not surprised, and she's raised really lovely hunters. So she's had babies here that she has done. She's raised Addie. And so she's not surprised by much. She's an excellent horsewoman. So as she has Addie here, she told me later that she would just stand and cry because she didn't know how to help Addie, because Addie basically presented like PTSD. Out of the blue, things you couldn't see would trigger dangerous, violent behavior. And it was, you couldn't see what some things you could see as the triggers and some you couldn't. So we had met briefly somewhere else. She, called up, and we did phone consults. And pretty soon, Addie, we turned her around by doing things that seem unrelated, just targeting, clicking, some other things, but we changed her neural pathways. We created a sense of safety and comfort and boldness, and got that old Addie to come back. And like I said, Jesse was no stranger to unsettled, problematic horses, but Addie was just really severe, her case. So we could change neural pathways and get we could change her back to the sweet Addie that she once was. So I think it's really important, no matter what your challenge is. Maybe it's just behavior. Maybe it is, you have a specific issue that you want to work on. Positive reinforcement is often a great piece, a missing piece that can add and change behavior, and doing it in a way that, because what's in it for your horse to do a flying lead change? There's not a lot, but now as we put something in it that the horse values, it really changes things. And so now all of a sudden you have a horse who's invested in the training and the outcome of the training, and that's a game changer. Now they're problem solvers. We're telling them they're doing yes. They're looking forward to the new training and time together. Think about it through traditional training. What we're teaching them to do is avoid pressure. As a kind of big flat thing, we're avoiding pressure. It's pressure and release, pressure and release. What are they doing? They're becoming masters of escape and avoidance. Because that's what we teach them to do. We teach them to be experts at that, because everything is avoid this, avoid this, avoid this, avoid this. So really, to change their perspective and to change their attitude, positive reinforcement is a great tool to slip in there, like it's all sneaky, to utilize to really change some behavior and to change our relationship. When I first started doing the positive reinforcement, I worked first with the marine mammals for 10 years. And then I started looking into the horse world. I heard you couldn't do it this way. The horses don't learn this way. Yet I had seen target with my own eyes, target trained hyenas, meerkats, hippos, rhinos, lions, tigers, giraffes, bears. I worked with, dolphins, whales, sea lions, walruses, otters. So I didn't see why it couldn't work with horses. I started my business at the invitation of John Madden. So John and Beezy Madden went there, and we started introducing horses for the first time to positive reinforcement. At the end of that first week, all I did was 3 5-minute sessions a day with the clicker. And then the next 3 days, I added in the target into those 3 5-minute sessions a day. They saw me for 15 minutes a day. Yet at the end of the week, so we did nothing that had to do with the ridden work. Yet we were going to. But at that point, it was just an experiment. And Beezy said, and Beezy Madden, if you know her, she's not a chatty Kathy, but she said, every single one of those horses you're working is remarkably better in the arena. Think about that. Wasn't some of them kind of better? She said every single one is remarkably better in the arena. But we had the training didn't overlap yet. I didn't even know what to make of it. So now I understand, have a lot more answers about those things, but it is just a flash. We picture it like an iceberg and what's underneath and below. The training that we're used to, the operant conditioning, is a part you see above the water. This mass underneath is the neurons, or the neural pathways. It is the emotions. It is the fight or flight. And those things is huge. That foundation underneath the water that we don't often see. That when Beezy said that was the first time I felt that. But now as we do, we know what we can do to change that relationship. So if you want to learn more about that, let's see, what would be good examples of positive reinforcement that we could add in? Because we have tons of practical, real situations, like, horses that stop, that would not go over a fence. Well, there was fear built into it. By breaking it down and teaching them to step over a ground pole and building it up, pretty soon we have a horse who loves to jump and doesn't need a perfect distance by the human, but can do it on their own. It built so much confidence, so much, getting them better. There was a horse at John and Beezy's. He was out in the paddock and he would not come in. Something had him frightened all day. For 5 hours, everybody went out. They tried different things. Different grooms tried, and they took food out. They took carrots. I had worked with that horse at a show. I did 3 5-minute sessions a day, just like we started with everybody else, but I hadn't done it in months. And I said, well, I could go out and try the target, because that was part of that early learning months ago at a show. And they said, yeah, but we tried food and food's not working. But I said, I have nothing to lose. So I went out, just like they said. He ran away. And then as I walked away, they said every time you walk away, he would run to the gate, kind of panic, like, come get me. But as soon as you try to get him again, he'd do the same thing. He would run away in a panic. So it's very clear he wanted to come in, but something had him over his fear threshold. I just used the target, held it over the fence, asked him to target. He drew, well, at first, as I turned away, he ran back to me. I could see him out of the corner of my eye, so I clicked. The premise is you always want to click on what you want to see more of. It's very precise. So it becomes like a scalpel, way to pull apart that little knee movement, that little bend, that little arch. And so as soon as he came to me, could click and reinforce, and he wouldn't come to me, but he was frozen now. And then I held the target over the fence. He dropped his head, he walked up like normal and went home. So whatever had this horse over his fear threshold for 5 hours, all of a sudden now it snapped him out of that place and back to being comfortable. And then we started to see this over and over again. So started to realize this isn't about the target. It is about the training and the deepness, the depth that it goes to. I cannot even tell you how deep and profound this training actually is. I didn't even really recognize it as this deep when I was with the marine mammals. But now with the horses, I see it over and over again. So there is so many more stories. There's so much more to learn. There's so many more examples. There's so many more specifics. Everything from trailer loading, injections, flying lead changes, getting over a jump, starting your young horse, working with the untouchable, whatever it is. Water judgment is a great example of a water jump that he was really struggled with. And positive reinforcement is what turned that around. So he could go on to become an international champion, winning and overcoming that water issue. So if you want to learn more about some of these things, if you just want to dive in and learn a little bit more about what is the science, what is behavior about, it's going to help you regardless of what you choose to do. We have a membership site, and you can go to shawnakarish.com. And you can see it written there. We'll have that thing. So it's www.shawnakarish.com. We have a membership there, but we have some resources there. We have a podcast. We have, blogs. We have things that can help you to learn more and to understand more. So we're really excited to be able to share what we've learned along the way, and appreciate you taking the time to listen.